So this is Grixis Death Shadow, a deck that has been surging in popularity lately. It may actually be the best variant of Death Shadow decks, and it won 2 major tournaments this past weekend. This list is that of Brad Nelson's from the Baltimore Open that he won with, and I really like this list. I think it's at least close to optimal. Mana base is pretty straightforward. Lots of fetch lands and shock lands, which you'll see in any Death Shadow deck because you want to be able to deal yourself damage with your lands and have access to that. And then also the fetch lands going to the graveyard is nice because of Delve. But if you are up against an aggressive deck or a deck with Blood Moon, there's still a couple basics here which you don't necessarily see in all Death Shadow decks, but I like having access to them. Then we've got our cantrips, so we've got Serum Visions and Thought Scour. Thought Scour helps put cards in the graveyard for your Delve creatures, for your Snapcaster Mage, and even to bring back creatures with Colligan's Command. And then Serum Visions is just the best card draw spell by default in Modern. I think it's great to be able to get that Scry 2 after you draw that card, and it helps dig you towards your threats, like Death Shadow. Then we've got 2 Stubborn Denials. This is actually one of the hidden reasons to be blue in these types of decks, and that's the Stubborn Denial. Having access to that 1 mana counterspell that can also protect your creatures and disrupt what the opponent is up to. And as you'll notice, most of the main threats in this deck will be 4 power or greater. Oftentimes, when you are casting that Death Shadow, it's going to be a 4/4 or more already. So, Death Shadow, the premier card, the staple card of the deck, the 1 mana win condition that you are kind of playing a delicate game by trying to figure out exactly when to put this into play. We're not losing life as aggressively as some of the other decks that have Death Shadow in them, so it's going to be matchup dependent when you want to play this. Sometimes you can get away playing it as a 1/1 or a 2/2, but other times your opponent may be coming to the table with cards like Lightning Bolt, and you want to make sure that it's going to be a 4/4 or greater when you do get it into play. 4 copies of Fatal Push. This is a premier removal spell, not just in Standard, but in Modern as well. The fetch lands make it so easy to trigger Revolt, and we'll see that there's more Fatal Pushes than Lightning Bolts here, because Fatal Push, it's an answer to Death Shadow, the best threat in the format at the moment. 2 Inquisition, 4 Thoughtseize, that's your discard package. Of course, we're going to want more Thoughtseize than Inquisitions, because Thoughtseize is not only can it take any card, but losing the 2 life is not really a downside at all. 1 Lightning Bolt, which it's a weird number, but I like it. 4 Snapcaster Mage. So Snapcaster Mage is a value card with so many 1 mana spells. You normally want to be playing Snapcaster on 3. And if you're playing in a grindy matchup, maybe your opponent can kill off your Death Shadows. You need an alternative win condition. And Snapcaster Mage, hey, it beats down for 2 damage a turn. 2 copies of Terminate, a versatile removal spell that also can get rid of these big Delve creatures like the Gurmag Anglers and Taskers. Colligan's Command. I like having that main deck Artifact Disruption, that versatility of the card. It's never really a bad card per se. And then we also can get back Snapcasters and just get a huge amount of card advantage that way in the late game. Street Wraith, it's one of those enablers of the Death Shadow that you're going to see in any Death Shadow deck. An easy cycler that also fuels Delve. It loses you some life. It does everything you can possibly want. And then we have the 4 big Delve creatures. So 2 Taskers, 2 Gurmags. Tasker's legendary. I would never want more than 2, especially since the activated ability doesn't come up that much, but it does cost 1 less mana than Gurmag Angler. And the sideboard, it's got a lot of good stuff here. Ceremonious Rejection is one of the most impressive sideboard cards right now. There's actually 3 copies, so there's a huge emphasis on this card. It answers Eldrazi-tron nicely. Any type of big Eldrazi's, any type of even just an Expedition map out of that deck. Then you've got Affinity, you've got Lantern Control. You've got a lot of different decks that actually have colorless spells. And so Ceremonious Rejection is a new sideboard card that is starting to pick up a lot of play. Then we've also got another counterspell here. The other 2, Stubborn Denials, which are going to come in basically in any matchup that has a lot of non-creature spell interaction. Maybe you're against a deck with a lot of removal. Maybe it's a combo deck, and you're going to want up to 4 Stubborns. Then we've got our Graveyard Hate, so the Nihil Spellbombs. Just an easy way to exile the opponent's graveyard entirely, reminiscent of Tormod's Crypt. Surgical Extraction, it's a little bit different, but this is a well-known sideboard card in Modern. Not only is it good against graveyard decks like Dredge, but we sideboarded in against combo decks as well. Maybe you're able to discard a combo piece and then surgical extract it away. Collective Brutality, it's another discard, versatile spell. It's great against burn and small creature decks just because the -2/-2 and the life drain effect is nice, but we're also going to be sideboarding in against a lot of the combo decks of the format. We've got some cards here now that hate on very small creatures, like Izzet Staticaster is one of my pet cards. I think a lot of people who have played this card understand just how good it is in Modern, being able to ping away an opposing threat like maybe a Noble Hierarch or a Dark Confidant or some Lingering Souls tokens. And then you still have this 0/3 that can threaten to get rid of additional 1 toughness creatures your opponent might play. So it's actually very good. Then the 1 Kozilek's Return. This is the weird one. But it's a sweeper at instant speed. And you know what? There are these go-wide creature decks like Elves and Collected Company and those sorts of decks that have lots of small creatures, and Kozilek's Return is a great way to sweep them away. Then we've got Liliana the Last Hope, similar to Izzet Staticaster in that it preys on those 1 toughness creatures, but this card is also a Planeswalker, so it's going to be good in those mid-range matchups where you want to be bringing back creatures from your graveyard. And then another Call Against Command, which you of course want against artifact decks, but also in the grindier matchups as well, just for the card advantage aspect of it. So this is Death Shadow, Grixis Death Shadow.